So let's get going here. Bienvenue à toutes et à tous. Lovely to see everyone. I'm going to welcome you all to the Advocacy Capacity Building Initiative. Love a good acronym, ACBI. We're talking about voice, community, a path forward together. Want to just point out this is being coordinated and delivered in partnership with our friends at Homeward Public Affairs. Rose is going to talk a bit more about Homeward in a moment. Um, Let's talk about what we're doing today. Okay, so we're going to tell you a little bit about CPRA and why we're here and the context in which we're operating. We're going to obviously tell you a lot about the Advocacy Capacity Building Initiative, and we're going to talk to you about our partner, Homeward Public Affairs. We're going to be demystifying advocacy. Not to get ahead of myself, but you're all in advocacy, whether you realize it or not, and that's one of the goals today is to really demystify it and drive home the point that you are already an advocate. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We decided in this one, we're also going to build in a little bit of a break so people can move around a little bit. That'll be 10 minutes at about the 45-minute mark, but we'll see where we are in the agenda. Then we're going to talk about coordinated advocacy in practice, and we're going to talk about, the through line for this advocacy capacity building initiative and all of the things that we hope that you as participants emerge from this process with a full tool set. And you're going to see that this is not complicated. It requires a certain approach. If you follow the general principles we outline here, you will advance the issues that you care about. Okay, so that's the agenda. By all means, Ige Agal, Ige, great to see you, man. Play for Dignity hosted the Power Shift Conference recently. I was there, and what a wonderful group. They're really dedicated to making sure that everyone has access to recreational sport, and Ige's leadership is absolutely instrumental in that. Okay, before we get going, I just wanted to do a quick land acknowledgement. So we at CPRA acknowledge that our work and the work of our members and partners takes place on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples right across this land. CPRA, our national office, is in Ottawa. It's located on the territories of the Algonquin and Mohawk First Nations. And we really do honor the deep connection Indigenous communities have to the lands, waters, and skies, recognizing their role as responsible stewards of these lands for millennia. We have a lot to learn from the Indigenous community. And so we're delighted to have representatives from the Indigenous community in our network. Our approach at CPRA is really guided by the belief that our well-being and liberation are bound together with the well-being and liberation of our Indigenous neighbors. We don't think reconciliation is about helping. It's about walking together on a shared journey, building a future where all communities thrive in harmony with one another and the natural world. At CPRA, our purpose is to champion the vital role the recreation and park sector plays in building healthy, vibrant, resilient communities. That's championing your work. The work you do is important. At CPRA, our job is to shout from the rooftops how important that is. We envision a future where there are vibrant public spaces, parks, programs. They're thriving in every community, and they're contributing to the well-being of all who live in Canada. And our pledge is that we foster collaboration, we share resources, and we build the connections that empower communities to thrive, all in service of creating a healthier, more resilient Canada. So we do three things at CPRA: sector leadership, and this advocacy capacity building initiative, we like to think is in a living emblem of what we're committed to. So number one, sector leadership, building community. You're in the community. You're here right now. By the way, we're past the 150 mark. We're at 155. Delighted to see that. We want to provide resources and tools to the community to help you do your important work. That's what this is all about. But I also invite you to check out things like canactiveinsights.ca, measuring impact. There's lots of things that we do. Go to cpra.ca to learn more. And then, of course, the third thing we do is we're a voice on behalf of the community, largely to the federal government, advocacy and influence we care deeply about. So the three things we do brought to life in this very webinar. I want to touch on what we're working on at CPRA at the moment, just so you can understand how the Advocacy Capacity Building Initiative fits into the broader context. So the first thing that we are working on is renewal of the framework for recreation and parks in Canada. Our colleague Nancy Dubois is on the line today. If you want to learn more about the framework, go to cpra.ca/framework. Nancy is available at any time to answer questions. She's easy to reach through the website. Can Active Insights. Oh, I see that Emma, thank you, Emma, is dropping in some URLs. Can Active Insights is a data platform and dashboard designed to help you make better decisions about many things related to our sector. We have the Advocacy Capacity Building Initiative, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. But the idea here is that we want to increase the capacity of the sector to tell our compelling story. We're also working on the Forward Together Summit, which is a national gathering of leaders. It takes place November 16th to 18th. That has a limit of 200 people. If you're really interested in attending that, let us know, and we will do everything that we can to get you to Ottawa in November. More on that in a little bit. And then the last thing I'll just mention is we launched yesterday something called Everyone Outdoors Together. I'll explain that a little bit later, but most of what you need to know about it is um, is in the name. We want everyone outdoors together July 18th. Laura, just want to make sure we shut down microphones and video for those that, yes, that's correct. So the folks that are watching, your mic and video is turned off. So don't worry, you feel free to chat amongst yourselves, make jokes about me and my haircut. I will not hear it. Okay, so our headline message at CPRA is that recreation and parks are a necessary public good, akin and closely intertwined with education and healthcare, not an amenity, not a nice to have, right? We have wonderful leaders in our sector. They're the giants on whose shoulders that we're building, who have been beating the drum on this message for, and I kid you not, 50 years. Murray Heidelbaugh, I don't know if he's on the call, but I learned more from Murray about what our sector should be, in 10 minutes with that man, than you would imagine. So thank you to the leaders. Brian Johnson's another one, and there are many of them. So I'm not going to get into the list because I'm going to miss people, but just know that we really are lucky to have some wonderful leaders that have been really beating and banging this drum for a long time. It's our duty to honor their contribution by helping to amplify the story that they've been telling for decades. Our sector delivers an enormous amount of value. So we talked to Christine Cameron at CFLRI through the Measuring Impact Project. Annual contribution to our GDP, $37.2 billion. Volunteer value, $13 billion. Cost of physical inactivity in this country. We know that if we get 10%, or if we get people to be 10% more active, we're going to save billions on the healthcare system. This is important work that we're doing. So why are we doing this now, right? Just as we articulated, the sector delivers enormous value. And we believe strongly that that value is not consistently understood, nor is it reflected in public policy and funding decisions. We want to change that. We need to work differently in order to do that. Our sector has signaled dozens of times over the last couple of years that it is ready to take the next step. And this is part of us joining arms and taking the next step together. I want to point out we got 161 people on the call, so I think you folks feel the same. That's really good turnout. And then the final thing just to say at this point is that the environment is increasingly competitive. Public policy conversations are really crowded. I'm going to show you a slide now. So this is an actual depiction of how advocacy works in Ottawa. You can see that it is a busy, busy marketplace. This is a screen grab of a book called Making Policy by a guy named Glenn Milne. Glenn, has been guiding. I read this book back in the early 2000s, and I strongly recommend anybody seek this book out. I'm just going to drop a copy of, how you reach Glenn. I'm just going to drop that here in the chat. But this is an excerpt from it, and it really drives home the point that it is a crowded marketplace that we're dealing with. So it's really important that we are able to assert ourselves in this crowded policy discussion. And by the way, we're going to be talking a lot about federal advocacy, but the principles that we talk about here are applicable at any level of government. Okay, so we're going to talk a bit about the Advocacy Capacity Building Initiative, why we're doing it now. And then I'm going to kick it over in a moment to my colleague Rose at Homeward to tell you a little bit about Homeward. Then we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to get into it. I hope everyone is feeling good about stuff. Keep jumping into the chat. We want to hear from you. The only reason we're doing this is for you, and so we want your feedback in real time as we go. Okay, what are we doing? The Advocacy Capacity Building Initiative is designed to increase the collective capacity of the sector to tell our very compelling story and elevate what we do in the public policy discussion. Public policy is just how we address the challenges that we're faced in society. It's a bit of a black box. I promise you at the end of it, you're going to see how you fit into it. But that's the purpose. We have a compelling story. We want to help you tell it, and we want to be able to tell it together in a more coherent way. So today is Advocacy 101. We're going to get some shared language. We're going to try and get everyone on the same page, demystifying advocacy. We're going to talk a little bit about what the next steps are. We're going to invite you to join us. There is an opportunity to contribute in the form of a fee, but no one's getting left behind. Okay, we have a very flexible registration model, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We want to talk about, through this process, how to apply what you're learning today on specific issues. And then how do we activate all this through some coordinated moments? And one thing we'll talk about a little bit is something that we do at CPRA called our Day on the Hill. It happens in the context of the Forward Together Summit. And so we'll use that as an example to bring, a day of action and coordinated moments to life. Okay. Our partner in this work is Homeward Public Affairs. Homeward has been with me on my CPRA journey almost from the beginning. Jacob Gornkov is the founder of Homeward. I'm not going to scoop Rose. She's going to talk a little bit about Homeward in a moment, but I'll just say I'm so grateful to the support that we received from Homeward. They originally came to us as volunteers, or Jake originally came to us as a volunteer. They offer much of the services to us pro bono. They deeply care about their work and about ensuring that folks like all of us have the tools to tell the story. So without further ado, Rose, I would love to welcome you and tell us a little bit about Homeward.
Thanks. I mean, you scooped me a little bit, but it was all good stuff. Yeah, it's a smaller boutique GR and advocacy firm. We're based in Ontario, but we have clients throughout the country. Some of our clients are in the recreation space. I'm not sure if Erin is here from Nunavut, but we're working with them on a really exciting new initiative to look at community benefits in Nunavut being delivered by a Recreation and Parks Association of Nunavut. We really focus on translating that the value you each provide on the ground into actionable advocacy that government can act on and that is clear. So we really work with mission-driven organizations. We're not working for the mining and the oil companies. It's really about community, building strong communities. A little bit about myself. I've been in the business almost 20 years. I'm spending my lunchtime birthday with you, so I guess I have to change it to 20 years now, I think. But started in government and moved on into the nonprofit world and in the advocacy world. So kind of understand both sides about how government makes decisions and then how to best advocate to government to help them make those decisions. And we'll get further into this about how you're all best positioned to be advocates because of the experience you have on the ground, because of the work that you do, and because of the importance of the sector in building a strong and healthy Canada. So our role really with ACBI, Martin is the lover of acronyms, is really to help you translate those insights into practical ways that you can advocate at the local level, at the federal level, to really get your voice clear, your ask clear, and to move some of these pieces along. And we've seen that in the past year and particularly the past few months. There's a lot of momentum behind Parks and Rec, what you do and how it intertwines with really the health and resiliency of communities across Canada. So again, why this work matters, as you all, and Martin will get into it, but you probably already advocate. You're already an advocate. But what we have found in working with organizations is they don't know where to start. Advocacy is a black box. And it's kind of daunting and overwhelming. And what we do here is close that gap. We talk about here's some of the tools, here's some of the windows, here's how you influence, and here's how you use your experiences on the ground to translate into recommendations to government and then to translate into action. It's not a one and done. It's not here's let's do one thing and we're done. It's a continual process. And as you build relationships and as you look at opportunities, you can really start to see that impact. And we'll talk about that today. And that's Homeward's mission. That's what we do for organizations across Canada who are in housing, supportive housing, who are in parks and recreation, who are in community services, homeless youth, adults struggling with addiction. So we work with organizations across the country to really provide that training, those advisory services. And we have just launched a new initiative called Homeward Talks, where you're able to connect with experts in advocacy, experts in government relations, experts in fundraising, experts in organizational development. And without having a big long contract, you're able to talk to experts in those spaces. So you can check that out and I'll drop it in the chat. But really, that's what we're driven by is making that impact and helping people who are already making impact make a collective impact and to really drive those changes that we want to see at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels.
That's amazing, Rose. And I just dropped the link to Homeward website. Sorry, you might have seen my Chrome browser loading there for a second. I was trying to remind myself of the URL, but it's homewardpa.ca. So thank you for that. And as Rose mentioned, there are many ways to engage. So obviously, folks, we want you to be diving into the subject matter here. But if you want to go deeper, you can connect directly with Homeward and figure out a way to work directly with Homeward as well. Okay, let's talk about what advocacy is and most importantly, what it is not. Okay, so what is it? It's speaking up for what your community needs. It's bringing evidence and insights to people who make decisions, right? It's about sharing the value of your work. Active Insights, that's a tool to help quantify the value and benefit of what we're talking about here. It's about building relationships over time. One thing that's important to note is that advocacy is a long game, right? We don't move public policy in a single cycle. You have to build relationships over time. And one of my favorite phrases in this is, relationship-based influence. And influence in the purest sense of the word. You want to influence for the benefit. We're very lucky in that the issues that we are trying to advance really do make life better for Canadians. And so we want to have some influence in the discussion, and we want to make sure that we are influencing in the discussion in the way that some much bigger concerns are influencing the discussion. And really this is about connecting what you see to what policymakers decide. So here's a little bit of a I'll come to this in a moment, but let's talk about what advocacy is not. So it's not lobbying. Lobbying is a narrower regulated activity. Yes, there is some overlap, and yes, we have to be sensitive to some of the lobbying regulations. And in fact, one of the things that we will be doing, which is kind of us walking the talk of the collective, is that we'll be working with one of our sister organizations, Active Abilities Canada. Many of you will know Krista Costas Bradstreet, but Krista and I spoke yesterday. And as a complement to the activities that we're doing here, we're going to host a webinar with the Office of the Commissioner of Lobbying so that we can talk a little bit about what some of those rules are. But the truth is that advocacy is not lobbying, right? So yes, we have to be sensitive to the regulations, but the truth is advocacy is really about telling the story. Advocacy is not partisan. We do not engage in partisan politics. We want to be talking to all sides of the aisle. And we want to be engaging champions. Fortunately, our work is such that everybody understands the value of it. even if they don't necessarily understand their role in advancing it. Advocacy is not adversarial, right? It's about relationships. It's about having conversations. And our chair here at CPRA, Gord Tate, wonderful leader, often talks about moving at the speed of trust. Well, building trust over time, um, it's hard work. And that's why it's so important to have relationships that you could develop over time. And the other thing that advocacy is not, it's not someone else's job. We're all in it, and it's really important that we all see ourselves in it. Okay, so we want to reframe this. So what is advocacy? Let's define it. So it's the practice of helping decision makers see what you already see so that they can make better, more informed public policy. I like to think of it as bringing the right people to the table, to the right tables to have thoughtful conversations about creating the communities in which we want to live, work, recreate, and raise our families. And so, it's consequential, this work. Um, Whether you call it that or not, you are already an advocate. Um, let's get on to regardless of the role that you're in, you could be a frontline programmer, you could be the executive director, you could be at a small town, and I noticed we have a number of wonderful representatives from small towns here today. You're in. Federal agency, you're in. Everyone is advancing the issues they care about within their context. So, if you're brand new to the sector, you're an advocate. And in fact, you bring something really interesting, which is that fresh set of eyes. And if you're a 30-year veteran, then you're able to, really draw on your own experience. And it happens in every corner of the country. Here's a punchline. It's one of the first things I say when we're briefing people to go up to the Hill. Policymakers need you. Okay, they need you to make good public policy. But the corollary to that and the follow-up punchline is they want you, right? You ask any elected official or political staffer, they want to hear from you. Now, they want to hear from you in a particular way. They're busy. They're, being approached from every angle. But they do want to hear from you. Our job is to present our case to them in a way that they see how we are helping them advance their objectives. And so the more that we can do to prepare for those meetings with parliamentarians to, run campaigns that implicate, and help them drive their issue forward, that's going to serve us well. But just know they need you and they want you. Rose, I'm going to pause there just for a sec. Is there anything you would want to throw in at this point? And by all means, jump in at any time.
And that's what we hear, right? Again, it can often be a black box, but government is so far removed sometimes from the actual work. They want to hear what the experience is on the ground, and they want to be able to shape some of the programs and some of the investments based upon those insights. And there's opportunities to do that are formal. So right now, the Human Resources Committee, it's really about of Canada. It's really more on in terms of employment, in terms of families. That's what that committee oversees. They're looking to do a study on homelessness. So they're looking for briefs on organizations and people who work with homeless populations throughout the country to really shape and form their policy. And they do listen. And then there's opportunities to also then present to these committees. So you hold the experiences that government wants to get. It's how clear are you with your recommendations? How aligned, how can you show alignment with what they want to achieve, what government wants to achieve? We hear a lot in with this government about building Canada strong, building strong communities. They look at everything as building that economic resilience and that community resilience. So if you can position your work, which is pretty easy to do with this with your sector, as driving towards that goal, you can get an audience and you can talk about what are the really key pieces that will make a difference.
Here, here. Okay, so let's take a look at what you already do, and I'm going to encourage you folks to start thinking about some of the advocacy you may be engaged in, whether you've called it advocacy or not. But, if you're briefing your council, on an issue, park usage, for example, that's advocacy. If you're telling the story of the people that you're serving and the impact that you're having on their lives, advocacy. If you're highlighting what a grant unlocked in your community, again, this is all advocacy. Talking about what closing a community center or a public space in your neighborhood or in your community, the impact of that, all of this is advocacy. Hosting a facility tour. I was on a wonderful facility tour with HCMA Architecture and IAKS, two organizations that you should learn a little bit about. They're part of our infrastructure issue expert group, so you'll be hearing more about them soon. But I was recently on a facility tour in Burnaby. So to the person who's here from Burnaby, we were there, and I'll tell you what, there's nothing quite like being in the space to really, bring to life what these spaces do. If you're talking to media, you're in advocacy. So having the message solid and thoughtful and delivered in all these different ways is really, really important. And again, our goal here is to help provide you with the tool set to do that in a way that helps us as a collective advance the issues. So what I want to do now is just take a moment, and I invite you folks just to drop in the chat. We'll give you a second here. What is something that you're doing right now that is advocacy? Share it for your colleagues on the call. And I'll get us started. The big emblematic one for us is we do a day on the Hill at CPRA that involves all of our board and executive directors of our member organizations. And not to speak on behalf of CPRA members, there are many of them on the call, but they're engaged in advocacy all the time at the provincial and territorial level. And they're also working with their members, which are 95% of Canadian municipalities. Don't be shy, folks. June is Recreation and Park Months. That is advocacy. 100% it's advocacy. Mike Greer says, chatting with local parks and recreation staff to talk about the work of what they're seeing. Yes. Quarterly report to the board. Adrian, exactly. Right? Heather, writing letters of support for funding policies, right? Using your research. That is a really, really important one. Advancing transgender inclusion. Inclusion is a huge deal, especially coming up in the framework discussion for us right now. Right. And on that note, I'm really quite profoundly bored with the politicization of the words diversity, equity, and inclusion. For us, recreational parks, it's baked into what we do. It is about inclusion and belonging, right? Becca says working with municipalities and PT rec organizations to build knowledge. Absolutely. Disability inclusion and physical activity, that's really, really critical. Right? We cannot allow vulnerable communities to be left behind. That is advocacy. Sarah Ain writes annual pre-budget submission. Sarah is the Executive Director of Parks and Recreation Ontario, one of our members. And if you're in Ontario and you're not connected to Pro, you're missing out. Pro's doing some unbelievable work. Their provincial level submissions are really well polished, and they've also done some outstanding work on infrastructure in the province that I recommend to you. Tara Chisholm says sitting down with municipal staff, looking at rental allocation policies. Yep. Mohammed says posting local community recreation events on social media. Absolutely, because at some point we're also advocating to the populations that we serve. Right? Maintaining trails for municipal land managers and reporting on the impact. Cynthia, slam dunk. Okay, so folks, you can see you're already doing it. Hosting mastery hubs, preparing for onboarding of new elects. That is a really great one. Steve Kellogg, who's the chair of BCRPA, one of our members. He's the director of recreation at the city of Vancouver. Steve, you're 100% in the advocacy game at a really big municipality. So telling compelling stories. Lynn, big pool rally. Yes. So you could see I'm not going to read all of these here because you guys keep adding and it's wonderful. But you could see in the chat, we're all in advocacy here. Making reconciliation work a pillar of what we do. Janet, yes, Janet from ARPA, doing work on reconciliation that is a model for for the rest of the country, what they're doing on reconciliation in Alberta through ARPA. Todd Schaefer in Saskatchewan, executive director of SPRA. They're really driving an advocacy effort at the provincial level in Saskatchewan. So again, I'm so tempted to just keep reading all of these because they're such good examples. But you can see that um, we're all doing this, right? And so take some comfort in that. Our goal again is just to help you, is to help make it more efficient, and make you proud of saying, yeah, I am an advocate, right? And the issues that I'm advocating for are the difference between living in communities that are worth living in and just living, you know? And I do tell this to anyone who's willing to listen, is that the recreation and park sector is rapidly evolving, it's profoundly misunderstood, and it's absolutely essential to creating the communities in which we want to live, work, and raise our families. So just a wonderful list of examples coming up, and I thank you all for sharing and leaning in that way. Okay, so that's great. So everyone sees themselves in advocacy, and I'm delighted to hear that. Okay, so from I do this work to I'm an advocate, and I think that we're well on the journey to doing that, and I do encourage you all to wear the badge of advocate with some pride, because if not us, who? And if not now, when? There's a lot of opportunity in front of us at the moment, and if we're not the ones that are going to be speaking up, I can tell you there is nobody else, right? So it's a big responsibility, but fortunately, you're already doing it. Okay. So I'm going to pause there just for a moment and see if anyone has any questions. Could we go to a little bit of Q&A, and then what we're going to do, I think then we're going to take a quick break. So we're close to on time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to recharge, and then we're going to come back and we're going to actually roll up our sleeves and start looking at some of the tools, start looking at some of the approaches, start working on the personal advocacy plan. Team, are we going to have a separate Q&A? Let me just see here. Of course, we're building. There's a question in the Q&A. Let me move to the Q&A section. You'll be patient with me, folks. All right. Oh, view this. Okay, this is the moderator not knowing what he is doing fully here. I don't see the questions popping up for me. So let me, would you mind, Emma, that first question, just pasting it into the broader chat, please? And I'll figure out how to do this. Okay. Okay, so Emma, of course, as always, right on top of the ball. So with upcoming municipal elections, what recommendations do you have around advocacy in the election? That's a great question. So one of the things that we like to do is get in the policy platforms of different parties. And I understand that not all municipalities um, are partisan, but there are analogs to that. So, if you have a municipal election, you want to be meeting with your local councilors, you want to be briefing them on the issues, you want to be going to town halls where there are different candidates, you want to be posing good questions, you want to be providing your backgrounder. So at CPRA, we will develop a election toolkit that we will share. It will feature elements of our pre-budget submission. We'll come back to that in a moment. But the idea here is reach out, set meetings, talk to the councilors that are running for re-election, and talk to the candidates, and ask them, get them on public record. If you are in office, what are you going to do about investing in our essential community level infrastructure? How are you going to advocate around the council table for more investment in the programs that get people physically active? How are you going to invest in the programs that reduce loneliness and make people feel like they belong, right? So there are many ways to do it, but the main is reaching out, getting yourself to those tables, and sharing your piece, which will be a thoughtful set of messages that you want to deliver to these folks directly. And then you want to ask them, what are you going to do on these issues? And then they go on the record. And that is very useful to you once they get elected or once they get reelected. Rose, would you add anything to that? Getting ready for municipal elections?
Yeah, if you can get on, you can submit, here's our advice to the candidates and send it to all the candidates about how to, you know, whatever you're advocating for, like having a strong parks and recreation in the town or city, and here's our recommendations to do so, and here's why, and sending that to all of the candidates and looking at to have an opportunity to speak with them about it, because then you might get in to some of their election platform or having them on the record for supporting or not supporting. So you can say, you can use social media with us too, right? We've
Yep.
sent this letter to all of the candidates. Candidate A, B, C, D has said yes, they will and support us. Like you've got to be careful to not get too into the weeds with the partisanship, but sending a letter saying, here's what we're looking for from our new counselor or from our new mayor, and here's who will say that they have supported it. That is not partisan. And use your social media to your advantage and your partners and associations.
Yeah, it's a great point, Rose. Social media can be a very powerful tool. And again, engage in the conversation constructively and in a nonpartisan way on the issues that we care about. So there's a second part of the question that was posed, but on the same hand, not sharing the value of our work can out us. You could be behind. So the message I had earlier about advocacy being a long game, it's really important to be involved at every step. So if there's a pre-budget submission, file your recommendations. If there's an election, write to the candidates with the issues that you care about, and follow up, right? And hold them to account. And by the way, elected officials, they and their staff read everything, right? You write to your local councillor, they will read that, right? Now, they may not always be as responsive as you would like, but that's because they're dealing with a bandwidth challenge, but they are reading this stuff. So it's important to note. Okay. How exactly is advocacy for LGBTQ communities baked in? Could you give concrete examples? So for us at the framework level, so the framework for recreation and parks in Canada, we're renewing it right now. And we talked to close to 3,000 people across the country. And all of them in differing ways are talking about inclusion of different population groups. So whenever we advance the larger framework discussion, we're talking about belonging. And so by definition, what we do is that we say that we are deeply dedicated to ensuring all of these population groups, including minority groups, LGBTQ plus community, to people with different abilities, physical abilities, members of different, ethnic population groups, that they are all being served. Right. And so when we talk to federal policymakers about the importance of the framework, one of our central messages is around belonging. And so that's how we do it. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, when you talk about recreation parks, you are talking by definition about inclusion. And so this can come up in different ways. So if you're a group, you're an interest group that is advancing those issues, then you have the opportunity to talk specifically about how the populations you represent are impacted when they are left out, right? So raise those issues with elected officials in a way that is respectful, but in a way that is thoughtful, and invites them to engage in the discussion. Okay. Haley Jones, can you elaborate for town staff, please? This is complicated as we do not meet with those who are running as frontline staff. It's a good point, Haley, and there's some challenges for municipal staff. What I would say is that you have to find your way to the tables where the issues you care about are being discussed so that you can make your make your case. It will be different in different environments. So, I mean, should municipal staff be reaching out directly to elected, to candidates? I'm not sure, but should you be, it depends on the jurisdiction. But should you be furnishing your leadership with the story that you want to tell, so that when they're sitting at those tables, that they can say, don't forget about this. This is really, really important. And so find ways of making it an issue at the tables that these ideas are being discussed. Sean is saying belonging is one of those things. Oh, sorry. Belonging is one of those things that Parks and Recreation has struggled to get right. Yeah, absolutely. It's very much on our mind, Sean. We know that we're not where we need to be, that there's an enormous amount of work to be done. But again, the framework discussion that we're having, this discussion that we're having at the moment, and some of the other things we're working on at CPRA, provide a platform on which to discuss these things. So, okay, we're gonna pause there. Deb says, Haley, you're critical in supporting the data, information, and measurements that those folks up the tree can use. Exactly, Deb, right? If you have data and information and you have your lived experience and your firsthand frontline experience, you want to be sharing that with the audiences who need to hear it. Okay, folks, we're at 12:47. What I think we're going to do, and I'm going to go and figure out this Q&A thing. That's absolutely my bad. I think it's just the way it's displaying. But we got a few questions there done. We're going to take a pause. I'm going to stay here. But by all means, we're going to reconvene at 12:55-ish, maybe a minute later, Eastern. So about 10 minutes from now. So thank you for all your questions. We had our break. Okay, so what does this look like at the federal level? I'm going to invite Rose back to talk a little bit about what we're seeing at the federal level in Canada.
Yeah, and we're seeing some great signals. But I want to start before I get specifically into that. I just want to talk about more generally in advocacy. Um, it's really all about timing. It's there are moments that you're able to influence. And the strongest advocacy is really clear. As I talked about, you have a clear ask. It's well timed. There's opportunity there. It's an issue that is being studied by government. It's an issue that's in the news. You might have heard a lot about AI recently. So there's a lot of advocacy around AI and a new and workforce protection with AI coming into a bigger strategy. There's the men and boys health piece. So health is very much on the mind of government. So when your issue aligns with what's happening in government, that's when it's kind of the secret sauce. And if you're able to position yourself in there, you might not be able to create an opportunity, but if you're able to align, so it has to be politically realistic. If you come out with, create a new fund, like create a new $10 billion fund for stray cats. I don't know if that's politically realistic. Um, but looking at, and we'll get more into it with the budget submission, but looking at what are the priorities of government? What are some of the releases coming out around government and what are they funding and how are they talking about it? As I said, they're talking about Build Canada Strong. So if you can mirror some of that language in when you talk to government and your submissions, that piques their interest. And to start with that, even getting on the government news list, if you're not already on it, getting the news from government around recreation and parks, around sport, around nature, and you'll see what are they investing in, how are they talking about it, and how can I use that to align my messaging when I speak to government. And that's at the federal level, but it also works at the provincial and municipal level. Also, backing by relevant experts and influencers. The men and boys strategy, it's just beyond the sector too. It's not just non for profits, it's government, it's a kids' health phone. It's Movember. There's a whole bunch of organizations that can get behind that and that can push government to do something in that space. And that's how action happens. And as I've said before, a realistic ask and a clear ask. It's how can they act on it? Here's my ask, and here's what you can do to act on it, and here's the impact. And having those examples of where they've invested before and the impact they've had. And we'll talk a bit about more about that in our budget submission. So who actually matters? Decision makers. They really matter. They hold the pen and they shape final recommendations. And they're people who work in minister's office, chiefs of staff. I was previously a chief of staff at Metrolinx, which is the transit agency in the GTA. And I can tell you a lot of decisions come together with talk with the senior management team, then what's coming from government, what's coming from community, and it all gets mushed together and a decision happens pretty quickly. So you have to have those advice, insight into those decision makers for them to even bring it into their decision making process. If you're not talking to them, if you're not submitting, if you're not engaging, they don't know. Um, Influencers, those are people who can validate, elevate, and pressure the issue. So as I talked about men's health, Movember has been really key in that. We have a champion in Maggie Chi around health, who's championing some of CPRAs and our and your members' priorities within government. It can be a really strong community group can change things. Nationally, there's a Disability Without Poverty group who has done a lot for folks with disabilities. So it's who can influence a moment and a decision, and who has a strong voice and a strong connection with government can also help you. So identifying those people, whether it be federally, municipally, provincially, and sharing your ideas with them and talking about positioning. Implementers, those are public servants who actually do the work. So you'll have a big idea. As I said, I worked at Metrolinx. The big idea was transformation across the GTA for transportation. And that was a big idea. And it was like, okay, implement. So then it's the bureaucrats. It's the people who work in engineering, who work in planning, who actually take that to life. So they need to know some of the practical limitations and some of the input, and they're happy to hear about your experiences and what works and what doesn't. And that can shape a policy that, sounds good in the idea, but in the practice, it doesn't work in community. And you can help decision makers and implementers shape that so it does get the impact that they want. Noise, people who may be visible but not relevant. And you've got to be really, really ruthless in who you engage and how you engage them and figuring out their influence. So there can be a lot of noise, or there can even be folks who, you know, part of their mandate, we have parliamentary secretaries who assist on files. Some of them are really great and they'll champion for you, and some of them don't really do much, to be honest, and don't really are not really pushing things forward. Maybe their chiefs of staffs are the people who are actually the influencers. So really identifying who's the influencer, and you do that by meeting people, by following up, which is really important, and by continuing to build those relationships. You can see who is a champion and makes things happen and who doesn't. So that's really important. And the decision-making process. There is a decision-making process. There is inputs. There are opportunities. So budget cycles, the government opens their pre-budget submission cycle every year and says, anybody give us input into the budget and what you want to see. You can be an individual and put in your recommendations. But of course, CPRA has taken, based on the broader strategy and based on what the priorities are and the opportunities within the sector, and really focused on some clear asks in this budget cycle. Mandate letters. We don't have mandate letters federally right now. We have one mandate letter from the Prime Minister, but when you look at the mandate letters, it tells you Who is responsible for what? What does the government want to see happen? And then you can say, okay, how does my work and my organization fit into that work? Or how does the sector work fit into that work? So you can start to build how you uh, pitch your work and how you pitch your recommendations. And I say pitch, but advise, how you advise on how government can achieve their priorities and how you can help them in doing that and how you're already doing that. So that's really key there. Election platforms, we talked a bit about that already. Getting folks to commit publicly before they're elected and then they're elected, that's great. Things happen that way. People make big election claims and then they have to actually act on it. So that's a great way to get some policy pushed forward. Political timing. I talked about momentum, a lot of talk about AI, men and boys health. We're talking a lot about nature, sport, and infrastructure, which is also fantastic. And we'll talk a bit about that later. But that really affects whether you get those meetings and whether you are able to talk about your recommendations in a way that government can see, okay, yes, this aligns with what we need to do, and these people are important and relevant, and we need to take their advice and also build that relationship with them as we implement our investments. Decision makers and influencers, that's really how and where the issues moved. So as I talked about, the minister's advisors, the people who hold the pen, those folks that make those decisions, folks that finance Canada, that's really where the decisions are made. So a live example, tell a lot about the budget submission. That's what it does. It takes your experiences, your needs in the sector, what you see, and really gives these clear four recommendations that government can act on. And Martin has done a really great job of really painting the picture of how important it ties into the health and well-being of Canadians across the country, of communities across the country, and of that economic and community resilience that we need to be a vibrant country. And that's also top of mind with the talk about tariffs, the talk about economic uncertainty, really strengthening Canada. So that's a theme that we can really build on. There's that coordinated sector story. You matter. You have billions of value in the country and you are doing the work. So there's that story. And the specific asks, as I said, they're aligned with the federal priorities of building Canada, of building a resilient Canada. And what a budget submission is, it takes what you see in the sector, gives those clear recommendations, aligns it to with what government wants to do, and then that's how you get that action and consideration. So it really has moved from, Parks and Rec matter to here's how the sector can partner with government to achieve its goals.
So there was a question in the chat by Mike Greer about where could we access and find the mandate letter. So right now, if you go to PM, that's Prime Minister, pm.gc.ca, you will see Prime Minister Carney's mandate letter, which was published May 21st, 2025. It is the de facto government policy. It's their agenda right now. So if you go to pm.gc.ca, you'll be able to read that, Mike. Typically, federally, each minister has a mandate letter, but Prime Minister Carney is doing things a little bit differently. But everything that we do, we run it against that mandate letter federally. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our pre-budget submission. So you can find our pre-budget submission at cpra.ca/PBS for pre-budget submission. And we have four recommendations which are summarized here. The first is a carve out within Build Community Strong for recreation and parks infrastructure. The second is we recommend that they expand the youth employment skills strategy. We know that youth unemployment is high. Our sector needs workers. CPRA has a role and lots of experience with these wage subsidy programs. So that's one of our recommendations. Then third is investing in our ability to have these types of conversations, which is the collective impact model in the framework renewal. And then the fourth recommendation we're making is on community resilience. So that is two parts. One is we're saying, help us help the sector respond to crises, as I think many of you will experience or have experienced, that increasingly recreation professionals are being asked to respond during times of crises like wildfires. So we have a thoughtful ask on that. But then the other way we want to build community resilience is by getting more people involved in recreational sport and physical activity, because we know that that is a real sound strategy to increase belonging, reduce loneliness, get people more physically active. So you can go to cpra.ca/pbs and you can read this stuff in detail. What I want to show you here very quickly is that in May, and Rose referenced this report earlier, that the report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, and Social Development issued a report. And you will notice that CPRA is directly referenced in that report as a result of our pre-budget submission. They're listening to what we have to say. And that was delightful to see, because we submitted our pre-budget submission in early May, and this report was issued later May, and they had included it. So very encouraging sign. And then I will also say, and I'm going to drop two really important links into the chat right now. These are press releases that you can see. I've grabbed some excerpts from them. Oh, sorry, we have the chat. I'm going to drop these. So the two releases that are pictured here are from recent releases that have language in it that just delighted us. So these are infrastructure programs that were launched, and you can see community infrastructure is named, recreation facilities for new construction or improvements, retrofitting, climate adaptation. That's a really important message that we've delivered. And then for FedNor, the north equivalent northern programs, you can see they're specifically saying this is for parks and public gathering spaces. They're concerned about workforce development. These are, at least in part, directly drawn from our recommendations. So it's another very recent signal that our advocacy work is in fact working. The reason I drop both of these links in for you is because these are open programs right now. So if you're at a municipal level, they're calling for shovel-ready projects right now, up to $1 million. So I dropped those two links into the chat here. Click through, read them, and they will take you to the places that you can learn more about these programs. So really, I'm raising it for two reasons. One is our advocacy is working, and two, there's some open programs right now that you may consider applying to. Okay. Coordination changes the signal. So, Rose, I invite you to jump in at any point, but this is just driving this is a long game message, right? So we started working on this year's pre-budget submission 2 years ago, right? We started developing the relationships, earlier than that. And so what we need to do is coordinate across the sector. A big part of what we're doing at the ACPI is trying to coordinate the sector so that we have a consistent message that aligns, that these signals accumulate over time, that the pressure is targeted at the right people, we're following up, and that we're telling local stories and how that reinforces with the national ask. Rose, is there anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, and in terms of signals, we're seeing incredible signals from the federal government in the spring economic statements that was released about a month ago. They call it playground to podium, so $755 million to expand access to sport. You talked about the Building Strong Communities Fund and funding open for local projects. So they're listening. There's things that are open, but that coordination that really changes the signal. Once you have that sustained messaging, but with the local context, that really makes a difference. I've seen it in the food bank industry. Something rolled out this week or last week, the groceries benefit, the groceries and essential benefit. That was from about 5 years of advocacy nationally with Food Banks Canada, and then locally with the Association of Food Banks and food banks like the Daily Bread Food Bank in Toronto, which I worked for. So they had that national ask that groceries are too expensive. We need a benefit. And then locally, when folks talked to their local MPs, when they talked In community, they talked about this is a solution. Here's what we're seeing, and this is a solution. And they kept that message. And that message has turned into a benefit that now 20 million people are going to benefit from in Canada. So it does work. It is a long game. It requires discipline and relationship building, but it does happen, and we've seen it. We've seen it happen in the sector.
C'est amazing. So, Jacques a posé une question dans le chat. Est-ce qu'il existe des programmes de financement pour les conseils scolaires? Premièrement, Jacques, je suis désolé, je ne parle pas, je ne suis pas complètement bilingue, mais je comprends la question. I will answer on anglais if you're okay with that. I actually don't know. But within Build Community Strong, those two links above, I would suggest that you click through and see if there's anything targeted specifically at school boards there. But I know that the federal government is thinking about all of these different community assets. But I will look into that. And de rien, monsieur. So we'll look into that. But I do also invite you to click those links. This day of action slide would just simply say that we bring people together, we send them up to Parliament Hill, we have these conversations. These can be really, really important activities. We won't dwell too much on this one because we're getting a little short of time and I want to get to kind of the next things. But, coordinated action on a specific day can be very, very useful. Yeah. Power of our collective, right? We really want to get the attention of policymakers. The last few years we've done a day of action on Parliament Hill and it's growing. So more information on that to follow as part of the Forward Together Summit. Okay, folks, so
Mark,
I'm going.
I
Yeah,
just
by all
want to
means.
say, in terms of the collective, the day of action is important to get that focus. It's the follow-up that is really key, and the follow-up locally and the follow-up federally that continues that action throughout just that day. So there's a lot of planning that goes into the day, but the follow-up and the relationship building is even more important.
I totally agree, right? The long game thing again. This is an important feature, an important milestone, but it doesn't work on its own. Okay, so folks, by all means, pose questions in the chat. I recognize I'm failing a bit as a moderator because we have a bit more content to get through. But do feel free to post any questions in the chat and I'll look at them before we close. Before we do, we want to talk about the through line. So what do we do next? So this is the start. What we're inviting everyone to do is join the Advocacy Capacity Building Initiative. If you go to cpra.ca/ACBI, you can register for that. I will talk to you a little bit about it. We don't want anyone left behind, but we do need to crowdsource some resources for that. Again, I'll come back to it. But what is coming is more training where we do deeper dives on these things. So, understanding what advocacy is, that's what we're doing today. Helping to define issue and the goal around that issue, that's going to be the subject of the next webinar. How to develop the message and the narrative around that, right? So by the end of each of these individual sessions, you'll get clear advocacy issue and goal. You'll do a decision maker map so you can understand who you need to contact with. You will develop a message set that works outside the sector. You'll develop a 90-day action plan, which can help you develop a campaign to build momentum. We're going to do a two-page briefing structure. How do you write a two-page briefing? How do you develop a practical pitch for a meeting? And how do you develop a follow-up plan? So all of those things will be coming. And what we want to do is invite folks to sign up for the next steps, which is Advocacy 201, Advocacy 301, some of the issue vertical briefings. More information on that is available at cpra.ca/ACBI. And what we're inviting is, this tier one and some of the associated tools are open to everyone and it's free. In order for us to do this properly, we need to crowdsource it. So we're inviting organizations to invest $2,500. They can send up to 3 people to the training. Our goal here is not to make money. Our goal is to get the resources to do it properly and crowdsource them. The asterisk is there because if you can't afford to pay the $2,500, in some cases we're dealing with really small organizations, just reach out to us and we will figure out a path forward that works for you. We do need to raise a little bit of money, but the value that we'll deliver will well exceed the $2,500. And as I said, we're deeply committed to not leaving anyone behind on these issues. So if you go to cpra.ca/ACBI, you can register, and there's a point where you can make a payment, you can ask to be invoiced, or you can ask to have a conversation with us. And we will figure out something that works for you. So yeah, the 2,500, and you can see it's registered at cpra.ca/ACBI. There's more information, and as I mentioned, flexible arrangements are available. The goal is to increase the capacity of the sector. We are very much a nonprofit, and believe me, we're not making any profit. But we will be able to create a stronger curriculum with a little bit of resources. And as I said, this is a starting point. We want to have a conversation. You can reach out to me directly or through the website to find out more info. Okay. So what we want to do now is run a quick poll and just to get a sense of where people are at. So if I could ask my team just to put up a poll, and the question is, would you like to join the leadership cohort? And the responses will be, yep, we're in. Yes, if we could negotiate the investment. Not at this time because of budget, not at this time because of capacity, and then not sure yet. So I'm going to invite Emma or a member of the team to load the poll, and then we'll give everyone a chance to fill it in. There's the poll. Please fill it in. And we will see where we land. It'll give us a good sense. Okay, as I thought, people will need more information. I encourage you to go to cpra.ca ACBI. Okay, this is really encouraging. I totally understand the budget constraints. And I totally understand the time constraints. You people are doing unbelievable work with limited resources. So this is amazing. Okay, it looks like we have some folks that would love to register. Thank you for that. And those that would want to have a discussion, that's amazing. We will follow up with you folks. And for those that are experiencing budget constraints, we really do want to talk to you, and we're going to work with you to figure it out. But again, the goal here is to increase the capacity of the sector. So thank you so much for filling in the poll. It gives us a real sense. I knew we were onto something. This is already very, very encouraging for me. And we will be following up with you individually. And those who are ready to register, please just go over to cpra.ca/ACBI and go ahead. Same with those who would like to have to negotiate the investment. By all means, just fill out the form and we'll reach out to you directly. But we're also collecting your info through this form, so we'll be systematically following up in the coming days. And by the way, the coming days, the next webinar is scheduled for, I believe, in August. Those will be mapped out on the website as well. If they're not already, they will be soon. And again, we're going to be doing a big push across our network through our partners on this. And so just keep an eye on our website and subscribe to CPRA's, follow us on social and subscribe to our newsletter. And keep an eye on it where we'll be publishing and we'll be talking about this. We'll be sharing this video so people have a chance to watch it, some of the tools associated with it, and then we obviously telling people the schedule. Okay, so again, I'm sensitive to time. If you have questions, by all means. So Lynn, you make a really good point. Your volunteers doing the work. We're finding a way to bring you along. Don't worry about that. We will find a way. I totally get it. And we want to support the volunteers in any way that we can. So just wanted to let you know I saw that. And post other questions in the chat here, folks. I'll come back to them if we have a few minutes. There's just a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about. There's a non-complete URL there, but we've launched something yesterday called Everyone Outdoors Together. It's July 18th. It is Parks Day, the third Saturday of July, the Parks Day in Canada. I strongly recommend you go to everyoneoutdoorstogether.ca to figure out what we're talking about here. But it's just an invitation for everyone to step outdoors together and enjoy a moment with friends, family, a sunset or midnight sun moment with their friends and family. And we're asking people to do something that we know that they already want to do. Which is just to step outside together and share a moment in connection with the land. And we believe that in doing that, we will create a platform to talk about all the stuff that we care about, which is increasing physical activity, increasing belonging, deepening our connection to the land, reducing loneliness. These are the platform issues that we want to discuss, and we want to do it through a national campaign. This doesn't cost anybody anything. Just go outside on the date and share your experience on social media. And just so you know, we have a growing group of activation partners. Royal Canadian Geographical Society, the BC Parks Foundation, Canadian Wildlife Federation, Trans-Canada Trail. So everyoneoutdoorstogether.ca, you can learn all about the campaign. And if you want to become an activation partner, let us know. We'll give you the toolkit. And an activation partner could simply be grabbing the people in your household and bringing them outside, or it could be organizing an event to showcase some of the stuff that you do. For example, the Ottawa Sport Council will be working, I believe, with the Ottawa Canoe Club, and they're going to have a bunch of people out to do some canoeing on Mooney's Bay. We'll have a film crew there. We're going to capture all that rich media, and our goal is to, socialize the idea this year, do a formal launch next year, and then hopefully by 2028, this is cemented in the Canadian cultural calendar. Just going to close the poll. We can share the results quickly here. Everyone can see it's a really nice mix. Okay, so learn about Everyone Outdoors Together. The second thing I wanted to just remind folks of, if you want to learn about what we're doing in the framework, go to cpra.ca/framework. You can learn more about it there. But this is really creating a new guiding sort of North Star for our sector that has two components to it. One is a shared agenda. What are we working on together? What are we trying to advance together? And then the second thing we're delivering to our funders, which is the Sport, Physical Activity, and Recreation Council, is a practical model for how we apply the collective impact approach to our sector. So learn more at cpra.ca/framework. CAN Active Insights, I've mentioned it a couple of times. Go to canactiveinsights.ca, free data platform. There is some paid functionality there, but there's also lots of free functionality, and we encourage you to look at it and pose any questions to us. And look at us, 128. So I really want to end with a huge thank you for joining us today. Please share information about this program with anyone you think would benefit from it. And please stay involved with CPRA. We benefit from the support of a wonderful community, as evidenced by all of the great people that were on this call. I want to particularly thank CPRA partners and our board members who are just working tirelessly on our work. Both Rose and I are available to talk more about the advocacy stuff. And of course, any member of the CPRA team is available at any time to talk about anything else that we spoke about today. Thank you, Chris. Can't do the work without you. Lynn, merci beaucoup. Thank you, everyone. So lovely seeing you. Stay in touch, stay involved.